and that is I've been health ministry director for 15 years, and I've never been to your church. I mean, that's a long time to, we have 140 different churches. I like to go to as many as I can, but since there's so many, I just decide to wait until I'm invited. So, Kim, thank you for inviting me. And we had the opportunity because we're here for town hall in Montrose and then in Farmington. And so I said, hey, we don't have anything going Sabbath. I can go to Pagosa Springs now. So that's, I'm kind of excited about that. It's not because you guys aren't loving and caring. It's probably, that's the thing that made me want to come. So I have been doing, let me go back to the very beginning here, sorry. I was messing around with this I didn't want to have too many slides, and so I was cutting it down to 60. So last year was my last year as health ministry director at the Rocky Mountain Conference. Because now I'm health ministry, I am wellness support director for the Rocky Mountain Conference. And you might say, so why did you have to change the name? Why a new name? When I first started doing health ministry, I realized that one of the things we were doing, we were giving a lot of information. We would have health programs and people would come and we'd give them information. And then after those 8 weeks or whatever it was, we'd say, no, we didn't say this. But it was like, good luck with that. And information is cheap. You can get it anywhere. If all we are is a church of information, we are dispensable. When we become a church of support, we will become indispensable. And I decided I have the opportunity, because it's my department, I want to start with the aspect of support in that area. And wellness support says a lot more. Hospitals provide health. Well, they provide treatment for disease. But in their mind, they are a health center. So they look at health ministry in the church, especially the hospital across the street from us, and they say, wait, we do health, they're health ministry. That's just the church thing. And so we decided we want to be, they do health, we do wellness. They give information, we do support. Now we're indispensable. And so I want to present that concept to as many of our churches as they do wellness support now, that they provide more than just information. In fact, Thursday night was the last night of a diabetes class I was teaching. And so I'm looking at these 4 people who are in our class and thinking, what kind of support do they have now that it's through? So I asked them, how can I support you now that you go home and you try to do these things on your own? I'd say, how would you like to do a monthly Zoom meeting to catch up, see where you're at? And by the way, here's my card with my phone number. You call me anytime. And I'm going to text you and give you support, so we're not just stopping with information. We're there to support. And I think there's so many ways, even in our evangelism, we give information, but not a lot of support. And I think this is a huge area that we need to shift in. And so I'm doing my part in making that happen. Here's some of the things we do at Rocky Mountain Conference in the wellness support area. How many of you have heard of LIFT? There's several different lifts. I wrote a program for the NAD because I do some stuff for the NAD, and we decided to call it LIFT, Jesus' Way of Coaching. Coaching is one way we can support. So this is a big part of this move as well. LIFT stands for listen, inspire, facilitate, and transform. And Jesus came to this earth to lift us out of the pit we had fallen into. And so we can follow his example, and that's why I wanted to use the lift. We can now lift in the same way that he did, lifting people out of those things. We like to teach about the power of lifestyle, and I was thinking later I should have done a sermon on the power of prevention. Huge. In our world today, most people in the area of health live in a disease treatment mode. We get a disease and then we seek treatment. Why not learn to prevent that? If we were to move into prevention, it's the answer to the healthcare crisis. And I might as well mention that in the spiritual line, we have the same thing. We have sin and forgiveness, which is disease and treatment. God wants to move us into prevention so that when we are tempted, we go to him and ask for help instead of waiting until after we fall and then we go say, sorry, will you forgive me? It takes him no more power to give me victory than it does to give me forgiveness. Why wouldn't he want to do that? Same as in the healthcare area. So we do hands-on cooking and then also local wellness support. This is, if you want to take a picture of this, actually, this is where you can go online and learn the coaching program, LIFT, on your own. It's free. And that was one big thing that I wanted to make sure it was available to anybody, and it's free, and you can do it at home. So there's no restriction from that. So it's our conference website /LIFT. So the things we do, we also help our neighbors. And I think maybe we're the only department that actually has where the ABC used to be, is our wellness support center. And so we're open to the community. How many other departments at the conference are open to the community? So we are there doing that. So we're going to practice what we preach. If I'm going to teach you to do that, I'm going to do it there in our community. And here's a picture of our sign out there, and we just recently put a flag, because people see those a lot easier, for our diabetes. So Conquer Diabetes is the name of our program, and now people have our name, they see it. We're right across the street from the hospital, and we're actually working with the hospital right now to hand out our information in discharge planning. So when people are going home, they're saying, who's going to help me? Where do I get support? What do I do now? How do I prevent coming back to the hospital again? And we say, you go across the street. It's free. The support. Here's some pictures of our cooking class. They're actually eating now. Here's some of the food that they fixed. So they fix it themselves. We don't stand up in front and show them how to do it. We actually let them cook it, and then here they are in the kitchen. During COVID, since we couldn't do programs, I built a kitchen and said, we're going to do a teaching kitchen. And now, because if you're changing lifestyle, food is a big part of that. And so if you aren't taking care of that, and this is our Conquer Diabetes program, this is another thing. We partner with other programs. I had somebody call me, actually the pastor gave me this phone number and said, They were contacted by a group called Love Inc., Love in the Name of Christ. It's a national program. It's all over. And we have a Littleton chapter there in the Denver area. Well, they called and said, we watched the Blue Zones. We were so impressed. We want to help focus on our impact classes that we have. I went this morning, I think it was, or last night. I said, I want a picture of that. I went on their national website, found a picture, and I said, that's our chapter. In fact, lifestyle, this was the first class that I held. That was the first class we did for lifestyles. I said, hey, we're on the national website. And these are people I know. This is where, in fact, they feed them. And for the first time, what we would do is I was teaching on nutrition stuff. And so we had samples for the rest of the people. So even if they weren't in our class, so we had like 15 people. The fact that it was overtly a Christian organization, you could pray with them, you could talk about God, you could talk about creation, all of those things. It was like, that was probably the best interaction I've had with people on presenting help in a spiritual way of any place. And I was a stranger there. I didn't have to do any advertising. I just show up. And here's my students. I would tell you, get involved with your community. I think you guys are already doing some of that. But get involved with your community programs that are already there. They will love to have that opportunity. So we have some websites that you can look at as well, wellnesssupport.org. And I'll give you more information later if you want. Besides, in fact, in case I forget, while you want to take a picture of that, I've got some CDs. There's actually 3 CDs in here. They're free. And they're out on the table. I want each of you to take one if you want them. The person who did these CDs was a good friend of mine, and I got even closer to him after my daughter and her family were killed in a plane crash. This is the memorial. They crashed in the cemetery right here where this marker is, right next to the airport in Butte, Montana. Well, that changes your whole life. In fact, the day after this, I called Steve. And I told Steve, I said, I love that song that you wrote. It goes like, one less smile among us, one more empty seat. Anyhow, and then later, as we talked after this, we talked about what I learned from this experience. And he wrote a song about that. It's in here. So if you want to look at that, it's called, I think I remember playing it for you guys. A Song from the Meadow. This experience is the reason I do health ministry. I realized it was the devil that was trying to hurt us. And I said to myself, I'm going to make him sorry. Because I'm going to do health ministry because I think it's the best way to hasten Christ's coming. So for 15 years, I've been doing that as a volunteer, free, and loving it, and realizing more and more the power there is in now wellness support. And I believe the more we grab onto that, the sooner we will hasten his coming. And that's my goal. I want to see my kids again. So, food, science, and salvation. So that's the introduction. Don't have a whole lot of time left. But. So when you see this title, Food, Science, and Salvation, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? What in the world is this guy doing talking about food? You don't talk about food because food is so personal. Maybe you're thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't have come to church today. Or maybe you're thinking, so he's going to tell me what I can't eat now. You know, that's what they do in these health and ministry things. Or you're going to remind me, Rick, don't you know that what you eat is not a salvation issue? Those are all the things you might be thinking about. And of course, my students, so I teach a health class, a nutrition class, in fact, at Mile High Academy. So I get all kinds of these kind of questions from the kids, you know, the kind of reaction that they have, like, what's wrong with? Oh, wait, Jesus ate fish and meat and drank wine. So what's wrong with those things? So I have to deal with that kind of stuff. So I can handle you guys. If I can handle freshmen, academy freshmen, I can handle anything. But when we look at the focus, when Jesus said to Adam and Eve, you can eat anything from these trees. You can eat all of this. Just that one tree. Don't go near that one. I decided to take a page out of his playbook when I do health work and say, I'm going to focus on the positive. I'm going to focus on what is good. I'm going to focus on the things that he gave me. But I still have to point to something that would be a problem. What if he had not told them, don't go near that other tree? Well, they went anyway, but so he gives us warnings along with all the good stuff. So sometimes we have to talk about some warnings, but the focus. I want to tell you about one of the people that helped me in the Love Inc. program. She was actually one of the facilitators that was assigned to my class. After the class was over, I told them about what we were doing at our center. She said, I want to volunteer there. So she came and we talked for a while. She said, okay, yeah, I'm going to take Monday mornings and so forth. And then she calls me back when she got home. And she says, Rick, maybe I should have prayed about that first. Because as we've talked, I realized you teach plant-based lifestyle. And I'm not there. I mean, I'm still eating meat and stuff like that, so maybe I shouldn't have. And I said, Diane, I need you. Because people who come aren't plant-based either, and I need somebody who understands that, okay? So she said, well, since you put it that way, okay. 6 months later, I was there at the center, and she calls me over. She says, Rick, I don't eat meat anymore. I didn't plan on doing that. I was eating all these good things that you teach about, and pretty soon I just didn't like it anymore. And I said, that's exactly the way I want to teach health ministry, all the good stuff. The light drives out the darkness. I don't have to focus on the darkness. And so, as a people, God is trying to lead us back to the original diet of Eden. But I didn't understand that for a while. I'll tell you why. My students, when I would tell them, they say, so it started out with this plant-based program, but then after the flood, he added this and he added this. And so people were saved not eating that way. So if they were saved eating meat, and so why should we worry about it? Isn't the salvation the important thing instead of the food? So why is he trying to lead us back to that? I didn't understand that exactly until I realized he knows what we're going to face. He knows what's ahead of us. And so he said, yeah, they got by with that, but you are going to be facing things that have never happened before. Situations you cannot survive with a cloudy brain. You need to have the brain that I designed this food for in the beginning to be able to make it in the end. Okay, that started to make a little more sense. And in fact, he says, be sober-minded. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion. So from this quotation, what jumps out at you? The roaring lion? Being sober, and say, wait, sober, that's kind of, we think of that from drinking too much, being drunk. Is it possible to be drunk from food? So being sober-minded, now he's saying, okay, you got to have a clear mind because of what the devil's doing. I know what he's going to do. You need to be ready. I know what he's trying to do. Your brain has to be ready. The battle is over the mind. And in fact, but the Lord, sometimes we focus too much on the power of the devil. And so we look at this and say, the Lord's faithful and he's powerful and he'll strengthen you and protect you. In some ways, sometimes the way he protects us is to give us a warning. He doesn't just make sure everything goes away, but he says, no, you have to have a strong mind. Let me show you how to have a strong mind to protect you in that way. The Marines make sure that these guys are as strong as they possibly can and be ready to face any kind of enemy. Don't they? I mean, what they put them through isn't just for fun. This could save their life. And so when God looks at us and he says, what is wrong with you guys? You're eating this, your brain is foggy, you don't take care of your body, you have a battle to go on. These Marines know more about how to take care of themselves and to protect what's going to happen to them than you guys do. And you're facing an eternal consequence of a battle. What's wrong with you? What if the way that God does protect us is through the warnings? We have to see those warnings as given. In fact, I ask my students, I say, why do you think God tells us not to do this or not to do that and don't eat this? Why do you think he tells them that? Because he loves us. It was the serpent who made God's instructions sound like a burden. And we today make his instructions sound like a burden. Do I really have to do that? That's what Lucifer was doing. That's what the serpent was doing. We are doing the work for him in making God's instructions sound like a burden. I was reading through Hebrews this week in my morning devotion, and it was like, in just chapter 12, there was 3 things that were what the sermon was going to be on. First of all, the Lord chastens those he loves. Well, chastens, warns, I got to get them ready. Another one, Hebrews 12, Esau sold his birthright for a morsel of food. You think he had food addiction? Yeah. So he sold his birthright. And what else happened? Isaac even had a problem with a food addiction. Esau, go get me some of that venison. I love that. Is it possible that his mind wasn't as clear as it could have been, so that he made some mistakes on who was there with him and stuff like that? So the love of food can be a huge issue. What about children of Israel? When they left Egypt, now the mixed multitude who were among them yielded to intense craving. This was the mixed multitudes. You think we're ever affected by peer pressure? Boy, these students that I work with, I have students who come in who have been trained in healthy living, and they come to school, even in an Adventist school, and the other kids make fun of them. And the things that they were doing that were beneficial for them and keeping their mind clear, they give up. Well, that's what was happening to the children of Israel. They were raised in a good way, but they craved the very same things that the mixed multitude wanted. Give us meat. In fact, they said, we remember, or at least the mixed multitude reminded us of this, the fish we ate and the melons and all these different things. Wow, I really want that. I'm even willing to go back and be a slave again if I can have that. Does that sound like a food addiction? Yes. That's huge. And we wonder if we have some of those same things, we're willing to not be as clear. We're willing to let the devil fool us without us understanding because of something we love to eat. And we hate the manna. Oh yeah, tofu, kale. Yeah. Do I have to eat that? You know, that's like what they were saying about the manna, something God gave them that had all the nutrients. It was kind of like whole food, plant-based in a morsel. Everything you need right there. And he gives that to us again. But now it tastes great because you have all those flavors and stuff. I bet they did get tired of the same flavor all the time. But what happened to them was actually an example to us. It says in 1 Corinthians, for the thing, because we lust after these things. Does this look familiar? I remember one of the kids in my class, Popeyes. That's all he could talk about was Popeyes. You know, love Popeyes. And it's like, I couldn't get through to him because it was so strong in his mind. It was just like this picture. Oh, I can't get enough of that. Isn't it our natural tendency, though, if there's something I really like, I'm going to find a way around it. I'm going to continue to look for things because I don't want to give that up. In fact, we love to hear good news about our bad habits. Once we find out that dark chocolate is good for us, whew, I can live now. So we love to hear that news. We don't read the rest of the stuff. That the good part that's in there isn't necessarily the sugar and the milk chocolate and those other things. But we might even build a theological excuse, such as, it's not a salvation issue. Where do you think that came from? It was an excuse to go ahead and do whatever I wanted to and not have to talk or listen to a preacher talk about food in church. Because it's not a salvation issue. The only reason I would say that is if I thought it was a burden. The only reason I would say it's not a salvation issue because I am wanting to get rid of it because somehow I see God's instruction as being a burden. And so I say, oh, I can get rid of it by saying it's not a salvation issue. We'll have to talk about that one. What if the very time that we need clear thinking is the time we've given up on those instructions? Think about it. I was looking at a pamphlet that was written in the year I was born, 1952. And it was something that was presented in the church, and it was stuff we've already given up on. So there was a time when we saw this as valuable. Maybe one of the reasons we have, first of all, God knows what is ahead of us, and he's preparing us. Look at Daniel and the 3 Hebrews. Did God know what was ahead of them? He saw the lion's den. He saw the fiery furnace, and he prepared them for it. What if they had not prepared their mind for those events? The story would have been totally different. What if we don't prepare our mind for those events in the future? The story will be totally different. In the heart and the mind. And in fact, what is ahead of us is even more than what they had to face. When we start, instead of saying, do I have to do that? What if we were saying, oh, God gave me some instructions there. What else is in here? And we search for it to say, is there some more instructions? Because I trust him, because he loves me. I want to find all that I can instead of, oh, you can read through the Bible and there's all kinds of stuff. I know it's easy to just pass over that because I don't like that one, instead of seeing and say, oh, there's a warning. There's instruction from a God who loves me. Or do we also see these instructions as a burden? We're becoming less and less interested in his health gifts. It becomes harder and harder for me to present those things because it's like, oh yeah. And one of the reasons is sometimes we have presented the fanatical aspects of health, and then we relate that to even the non-fanatical approaches. And I try to be non-fanatical on this. I'm going to present things that I believe are sure and honest and not extreme. This is not extreme. So while the world is becoming more and more interested, what? When I put on, I don't even have to hide that I'm teaching a plant-based cooking class because the world wants to come to that. I have to hide that when I do it sometimes for the church. I don't get it. Anyway. So he does give us warning through science also, because think about it. If my mind is important to understand truth, what about the world? Don't they have to have a clear mind also? What if we are preaching truth and they have a cloudy mind and it goes right over and they don't even understand it? So God says, I can teach them too. Maybe they'll even learn it more than those who I gave it to in writing a long time ago. I do it through science. So let's see something that what's happening in science today. How many of you have heard about microbiome? You see, God is really doing a good job on this. He's getting this message about the microbiome out to the world. Well, why is that important? So today we know that what we eat feeds good and bad bacteria, which will affect my mind. I don't have a problem with that, preaching people who just walk in off the street into our center. They understand that. Here's some of the things that happen with dietary fiber. Where do you get fiber from? Plants. Okay. So just from plants. Butyrate decreases inflammation. Inflammation is the foundation for almost all of our chronic diseases. There are things that support learning and memory. Do I want to remember scripture and those things, which I have a hard time with? But endotoxins can reach our brains if I break down the blood-brain barrier. Let's look at that. So the food I eat, there's some food that feeds the bad bacteria, there's some food that feeds the good bacteria. The bad bacteria end up, so I've got the food that I eat, those bacteria are really picky. The bad bacteria says, I only like certain things. And here's an interesting thing. Those bacteria will actually drive you to the store to get those. No, they do. They push you. I want that. Did you know that your bacteria actually are controlling you? We feel like a, automaton or something. These bacteria are telling me where to go. Go get sugar. Go get meat. They do. They actually give us those desires and say, do you want to be controlled by the bacteria? The good bacteria also, they are fed by each little colony of different bacteria like certain things. So the more variety of plants you eat, the more of those different colonies will develop. And every one of them is producing short-chain fatty acids. I know that gets a little technical. Each one produces short-chain fatty acids that the body needs and wants. So the more variety, the better. This is a picture of our lining of our gut. These are gut lining cells. And the food that goes through our gut cannot get into the bloodstream unless they go through these cells. Kind of like when you go to a ball game, they make you go through a particular place so they can check your ticket and so forth and say, okay, you're okay, you can go through. That's what happens when they go through these cells. But I've noticed there at Mile High Stadium, when the game is over, these gates open up and we can go out without going through the cell. And I say, what if those gates were open to the beginning of before the game? Anybody could just rush in there without having to be checked. That's what happens when these tight junctions, which is the gate, are broken. And those are broken by different kinds of food. Primarily sugar, animal products. They feed the bad bacteria, and the bad bacteria break these tight junctions. It's called leaky gut. Leaky gut then causes chronic inflammation. Here's all these white blood cells in the bloodstream going throughout your entire body. Inflammation. No wonder you don't feel good. So this inflammation's going up. The same blood goes to your brain, except God has placed a protection there. He calls it a blood-brain barrier. Anything that's in the blood can't get into the brain unless, similar to the break in the gut cells, we get the same problem now that we have the inflammation. And I have broken down the barrier God has put there to protect my brain. I have a leaky brain now. So now I have toxins entering the brain. Never should have happened. Not meant to happen. It's not too good for that to happen. In fact, some of the things will happen with that. Decreased mental clarity, causing depression and anxiety, inability to concentrate, poor memory, Alzheimer's disease, all of these things. Inflammation of the brain. We had somebody at work who, their husband was in the hospital, almost died from inflammation in the brain. And I'm thinking, wait, we have a protection against that. So all I can think of is he had leaky gut, causing leaky brain. That never should have happened. Never should have had those toxins entering into the brain. So anxiety, depression, brain fog. I am not going to be able to fight against or resist a powerful foe when my brain is in that state. Why do you think it is all of the things that we have heard about are to protect us on this? And we say, why did they say that? Why did he say that? Here's a statement I have to always introduce why I say it, because it's used poorly too often. Many who are now only half converted on the question of meat eating will go from God's people to walk no more with them. It's like I saw that and said, this is crazy stuff. Something's wrong with that. Until I studied the microbiome. So the very thing that causes the leaky gut, causes leaky brain, now I can't even comprehend truth. When the straight testimony is given, it says people will rise up against it, and that will cause a shaking. Why do they rise up against it? Because they don't even understand it. They don't understand what's being said, so they said, I don't like that. It's not because I don't love the Lord. It's just simply because my brain is foggy and I kind of understand that message that's being given. And so I said, I don't like that. And it makes sense. A warning that says, protect your brain and you'll continue to understand truth and stay in the truth. Don't protect your brain. Pretty soon, the peer pressure and other things is going to be stronger than that. And why not just leave? The battle is for the mind. And God is giving us instruction on how to protect it. And that is a salvation issue. Because I will choose things and I will be deceived. And when I'm deceived, I can lose my salvation, not because I have to tell the students this, and this was important for me to make it clear to them. God will never reject you because of what you eat. See, they had that wrong. They thought God was rejecting them because of what they eat. You won't go to heaven if you eat meat or something like that. God will never reject you because of what you eat, but you may reject him because of the confusion, because of what you ate. Does that straighten that out a little better? It puts it where it belongs. Yeah, and both of those, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And did you notice that sugar was one of the things that caused the... Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. Very good point. Yeah.
But the sugar we wouldn't touch.
Right. And that is huge, because a lot of times we'll have people come in with our diabetes class. They've been Adventists all their life, and they're eating all this junk, all this sugar. When I went away to school, my mom was always really good about good, healthy meals. But when we went away to school, all of us kids, she started baking all these yummy things, because when my little kids come back, I want them to have something nice. And so she died from diabetes, basically a heart attack from the diabetes that she created trying to make us feel good. So yeah, you're exactly right. We focus on that one thing and ignore the other. We want to look at all of those, so thank you. So the battle is for the mind. Is the devil aware of the foods that will cause this to happen? He understands the physiology. Do you think he'll use it to help deceive us? Yes. Do you think God is aware of this happening? And so he looks down through time and he says, I see what this devil's doing. He is, first of all, making us think that the health message is a problem that we have to get rid of, and it's fanatical. So that's one way he can get us to not be ready. And he says, I have to give them a warning that the devil's doing this to you. We talk about the Laodicean church. The devil doesn't have to win the argument. He just has to have you asleep or drunk. He didn't have to win any argument. Put them asleep. Or have them drunk and not have sober-minded. And when we say drunk, I say drunk with food as well. So he uses these things, and God is trying to bring us back. And this has been for 15 years, I've been trying to say, how can I present the health message in a way that is loving, and at the same time bring us back to where we should be? So there's a connection between the damaging foods that, isn't it interesting that all those things that cause the leaky gut, all of them are addictive foods. The things that cause addiction are things that are high in caloric concentration, which is sugar, fat, saturated fat in the meat. All those are addictive. Do you think it sounds like a conspiracy? The guy who wants to mess us up in our mind comes up with the addictive things, so it's hard for me to break it. We do have conspiracy. We have somebody who hates us and hates our God and wants to destroy us. So we learn through science. Sometimes we say, well, it's not in the Bible to say I can't do this. Science done properly is as solid of a law of God as if it was written in Scripture. Because he is the God of science. When a scientist who wants to find truth, he will see God's laws in science. It's only when we have biases or for financial gain that we distort truth to be able to prove something else. But scientists who are trying to find truth will actually, what they come up with will be the laws of God in nature. When we discover those are just as solid. So when I'm studying science and I see things that hurt our body, I don't have to go look and say, well, I wonder if it's in the Bible somewhere. Well, yes, it probably will be. But I accept that as solid as if God had said that, because I want to take care of my body. And if it's something that will take care of it, it is his will that I do it. So he's the God of science. Prevention. This is a quotation that I paraphrased. It says, health reform is to do among our people work which has not yet been done. I don't like to use the word health reform because it makes people see red. Okay? But really what health reform is prevention. Health reform isn't having hydrotherapy treatment after I'm sick. That's treatment. Health reform is doing the things that will prevent that from happening. So in essence, health reform really is prevention. That's why it changes. Prevention is to do among God's people a work which has not yet been done. Do you want to do a work that should be done, that hasn't been done? Let's do it for the right reason. This message is just as important to ultra-conservative people who are extreme as it is those who are asleep. It's just as important for both sides because we have people who are too extreme in the way they present things and don't present them in the loving way that God who loves us is trying to warn us about these things. So at creation, did God give the best fuel for the human mind? So? Was the original diet the ideal for clearing and make a clear, comprehending mind? Yeah. So why not go back to that? It's real easy. We can't afford to face the deceiver without mental clarity. So let's make it simple. His message was get back to the original diet, whole food, plant-based, which is the term we use. Whenever I do research on things like recipes now, I just put in WFPB first, and then I don't have to futz through that. All that I'm doing is saying, I just want to study things that are the original plan. I mean, does this look like it's not too good? I mean, when we look at God's gifts that he gives to us, again, these are beautiful. These are great. You will do the same thing that my friend Diane did when you start focusing on all the good stuff. You won't even want the other. We have side effects. This is kind of like a drug commercial. The side effects are enjoyable food, a clear mind, and a healthy body. Okay. Not too many other side effects. So God is calling for a special people with a special message given with clarity that will hasten his coming and enjoy the best in life. Hope I wasn't too hard on you today. These are principles that are out there. The world understands them. We as a church need to start saying, a loving God wants the best for me. He doesn't want to see me, like Eve, be deceived and make a decision against him. He wants us to also understand it so clearly and be loving to people and supportive to people that they will be drawn to it. What an opportunity. Yeah, time to sing.